Thank you so much, Govind. Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the CSR Universe virtual roundtable on achieving foundational literacy and numeracy at scale. What will it take to meet India's NIPUN Bharat goals? I am Ruchika Kumar, editor at the CSR Universe, and I am delighted to be co-hosting today's discussion alongside my
It's
colleague,
15:30.
Mr. Abhishek Kumar, consulting editor at the CSR Universe. Thank you all for joining us for what promises to be a timely and meaningful discussion. And before we begin, I'd like to just share that today's discussion is being streamed live on LinkedIn. So we encourage everyone who joins and watches us our LinkedIn channel to please participate by posting your questions or comments in the LinkedIn comments section. We'll try to take up a few audience questions if time permits. So, as we know, that foundational literacy and numeracy, or FLN, is widely recognized as the cornerstone of all future learning. A child who cannot read with understanding or perform basic numeracy in the early grades is far more likely to struggle throughout their educational journey. So, recognizing this gap, the government of India had launched the NIPUN Bharat mission with the ambitious goal of ensuring that every child achieves foundational literacy and numeracy by the end of grade 3. There has certainly been encouraging progress over the past few years, but of course, there are still very many multifarious challenges. So, according to the annual status of education report, the ASER 2024, only about 1 in 4 children in class 3 in rural India, especially, can read a class 2 level text, while only around one third can perform basic subtraction. This issue highlights that many children are not still acquiring foundational skills at the pace which is needed to achieve universal FLN. So, as we approach this Nipun Bharat timeline of 2026-27, the question is no longer whether FLN matters, but what it will take to achieve it at a scale, sustain those gains, and ensure that no child is left behind. So today's discussion is therefore centered not just on identifying the challenges, but on exploring practical and scalable solutions. We will be examining where India currently stands, the barriers that continue to hinder progress, and what distinguishes successful FLN programs from those that struggle to scale. How stronger collaboration among governments, corporates, communities, and implementation partners can accelerate learning outcomes, and how CSR investments can create measurable long-term impact. We will also discuss of course, the growing role of technology and AI in supporting foundational learning, while considering where evidence supports their use and where caution may be needed. So we are delighted to be joined by a distinguished panel of leaders who will bring diverse perspectives from program implementation to teacher development, philanthropy, and of course, systems strengthening. So, I would like to start by welcoming first panelist, Mr. Nixon Joseph, who is the Group Executive Director at Devi Sansthan, which is also our knowledge partner for today's roundtable. Hello, sir.
Thank you, Ruchika.
Also joining us is Ms. Sangeeta Dandapat, Head Foundational Literacy and Numeracy at Kotak Education Foundation.
Thank you so much, Ruchika. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Smithin Brith, Head of Early Years Direct Programs at Pratham Education Foundation.
Hello, sabko namaste.
And our next panelist is Ms. Sunisha Ahuja, who's the Director Equity at Language and Learning Foundation.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
And finally, joining this conversation is Mr. Robin Sarkar, Director, Shiksha and Dadu Development Program, Shiv Nadar Foundation.
Namaskar, Sabiko.
A very warm welcome to our panelists. We truly appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And with that, I'd like to now invite my colleague Abhishek to kick off today's discussion. So over to you, Abhishek.
Well, thank you, Ruchika. And I see a lot of experienced faces and such an esteemed panel. And I also look forward to learning a lot after this discussion, because foundational learning and numeracy, that is what it is basically called, is something that has picked up some kind of discourse in the recent years, I believe, because during our childhood days, we have never heard such term, but recent years, we have seen global bodies, UN, World Bank, everyone is talking about bringing that foundational learning at the tender age of 8, 10, 6 years, so that they will have a building block right from the beginning, and that will help them have their social and economic stature in the future as well. Starting with Mr. Nixon Joseph, if you could please, throw some light on how this, foundational learning concept has taken roots in the Indian education system, because you're working with this education institution also, and you have been talking to a lot of people in this sector. How was it late? Did we start late focusing on this foundational learning? Because now we see a lot of talk around it, but as I said, in my days, I had never heard this term.
Yes. Thank you, Abhishek, for that question. And thank you, CSR Universe, for organizing this webinar on a very relevant topic. As rightly told, foundation literacy numeracy skills, I have also heard about it very late. Like I was never heard about this topic when I was a student, or later I was working elsewhere also. I never thought about this topic. I think it has come into prominence after the new education policy, which has told that if foundation literacy is not there, then all other parts of NEP is of no relevance. And what I have observed from various studies is that India is facing a very high rate of learning poverty, almost 55%, which was aggravated or exacerbated by the COVID-21. But then because of the focus laid on NEP and initiatives taken by civil society organizations, the government in the policy level, etc., I find there is a gradual improvement in the learning levels. With the latest ACER report 2024 has shown improvement in foundational learning. I think a very significant improvement compared to the last 2 decades. It is happening. So that deserves a recognition. It only shows that when government, community, civil society organizations, CSR donors all have come together, there has been slight progress in learning as far as foundation literacy and numeracy is concerned. But still we have a long way to go. Like every year we miss, one cohort goes up without proper FLN proficiency. And as all of us are aware, it only shows that in the years to come, there will be a lot of attrition if FLN is not focused on. And at Devi Sansthan, what we have been working with the government schools, both in India and overseas also. What we have observed is that if we are able to teach children in their natural ways of learning, then the rote system or the old pedagogy and all, we can address the issue of FLN very fast. Devi Sansthan's alpha pedagogy is where we tell that foundation literacy, numeracy, proficiency can be achieved in 45 days, and this has been implemented in various government schools. I find that a innovative pedagogy like that or similar innovative pedagogies can be an answer to expedite the achievement of NIPUN goals. And I feel for the next phase, we should give priority to learning outcomes rather than measuring inputs, and strengthen continuous teacher mentoring rather than one-time training, and adopt proven pedagogies. See, we are addressing this old problem with old solution. Instead of that, whether we can address this with new solutions, new pedagogies. This has to be thought of, and use a real-time assessment to identify children who are falling behind, and strong partnerships between the government, CSR, civil society organizations, and the community to make this a national movement rather than a government mission. This is what I have to tell.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nixon. And coming to now, Mr. Robin Sarkar, you have been working with Shiv Nara Foundation, such a great institution. A lot of people, you have brand, especially in higher education. But when it comes to very basic education at a level when uh, the candidates which reaches to university, they are supposed to be trained at that level. Do you find any difference that a certain section of a student or students coming from certain backgrounds, maybe private sector, government sector education, they have a different way of approaching things, or they have a different level of learning and comprehension ability?
Are you inquiring about in higher education or in general?
Yeah, of course, in higher education. I mean, that is what probably let us also understand why this foundational learning is so important and why we're talking about it
Yeah,
so much.
definitely. We have we have a various plethora of people coming to the university, and they are coming from various backgrounds also, and we have special scholarships which caters to economically backward class people also being given equal footing at the time of admissions. And yes, you are right. There is a difference in the way a certain category of people or certain background of students react to learning and absorption of various topics and subjects, because and it actually goes back as to foundational literacy and numeracy, where a basic fundamental understanding of concept of language and numeracy contributes to a further detailed understanding of concepts and subjects. So yes, it makes a difference, but it is not a permanent, I would say, because it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of patience and patience to the educators and energy from the students to be at par. I mean, yes, there is a difference, but it's not permanent. It can be filled in. So in the Shivnata Foundation, we also have a Vidyagyan Leadership Academy, where we pick up students from meritorious students from rural part of UP from grade 5, and give them completely free education from grade 6 to grade 12th. And this is completely free and residential and everything. And school education to the quality of the top notch of the country. Having said that, the moment when they enter into the Vidyagyan Leadership Academy, we have a crash course to address these kind of gaps. I mean, and initially we thought that it can be done using our regular curriculum also, but then we realized that no, we need to maintain special provisions to address this gap in the initial time. So we have a crash course which aligns them to the grade appropriate level, and then we takes on to the sixth standard onwards. Same when these Vidyagan students, when they or these economically backward class students, when they reach out to the university at higher level, we find a similar kind of thing. Over there, we don't have a special batch or special crash course. At that time, we rely on the educators to give special attention to make that to fill in that gap happening.
Okay.
But yeah, largely speaking, yes, there is a gap, and it affects till that level also.
Of course, it does. And to have that answer, why this gap occurs, I think Ms. Sunisha Huza is somebody who has worked a lot in history education and in a diverse background. So, if you could tell us something about what are the major hurdles which kind of prohibits or inhibits these foundational learning? Is it capacity? Teachers are not educated, resourcelessness, or maybe some social setup that does not that also limits the access of education to a certain section of society. What are your findings, your experiences in what are the major obstacles in the foundational learning capacity of young kids?
Thank you, Abhishek, for that question. And I'd like to start by saying that, the government of India has actually now ensured universal access to education for all children, which means that there is a school available for every child within 1 kilometer radius from where they stay. Having said that, I think yes, everybody's concern is on improving the quality of learning of children, being this focus on how children need to be taught and what needs to be. With the experience of Language and Learning Foundation over the more than a decade now, our experience has been that we still have a lot of children coming into grade one with no preschool experience. And preschool education is really the foundational like stage through which children start learning pre-literacy, pre-numeracy skills, which is now recognized by the National Education Policy, where it has now said that age 3 to age 8 is a learning continuum for children. So if children are coming, one, that there are children who are coming with no preschool experience, or they're coming from preschool experience which can be of uneven quality. So the starting point for every child is very different when they enter grade one. To tell you a little more in terms of, while the government has made extensive efforts, and as was said in the opening remarks, that we are now seeing both in the ASER 2024 report and also the learning assessment carried out by the Government of India, which is the Parakh Rashtriya Sarvekshan, we can see that children from rural government schools have really improved in their learning. In fact, in certain states, the learning has come back to pre-COVID levels. We can be very happy about it, but pre-COVID levels were also very low. So yes, we have to cover a lot of ground in terms of improving learning. What I would want to refer to is a teaching learning practices survey. So we often assess children's learning, and we find that children are not being able to, attain grade level learning outcomes. Last year, Language and Learning Foundation conducted a teaching learning practices survey across 9 states, covering more than 1,000 schools. And what some of our findings, which may allude to certain challenges that are there, is that while the National Education Policy recommends that children's languages should be used in the classroom for formal teaching, there is still some hesitation on part of teachers to use that children's familiar languages for teaching. There are efforts that are happening in states like Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, and Jharkhand, where the governments are now implementing at scale interventions of addressing this issue of language mismatch. However, we still have a long way to go. The other is the practice around use of teaching learning materials in the classroom. Governments have made sure that a lot of teaching material reaches in the classrooms. However, are teachers using all of that teaching learning materials in the classroom? Because in terms of the approach that is being implemented, at least where LLF is working with the government in collaboration with the government, I want to refer to a global report, which is called the GEEP report, called the Best Buys report, where globally studies have pointed out to some instructional strategies like a structured pedagogy approach, which works in improving children's learning. So our programs are designed around the structured pedagogy approach, wherein the teachers have to make sure that they're addressing all learning competencies for children. I think because the teachers are now getting to change their pedagogical practices, it's going to take a little time for all of them to change practices, for which they also need a lot of support from their mentors and coaches. So whether it is the block education officer, it's the academic resource person, these are the people who will have to kind of really support the teachers, help them change their classroom practices. And the last thing that I would want to add here is learning assessments. We are seeing that there is a lot of effort that's going around in terms of improving the quality of learning assessments. But as a challenge, I still find that a lot of the learning assessments that are happening at the classroom level are becoming very high stakes. Governments, while these assessments should be assessments that teachers should use in order to make changes in their classrooms, but if these become high level data points that are being captured by the system, then often it affects the quality of the data that gets collected, and therefore the decisions that get made. So these are some of the things that need to be addressed. I think efforts are ongoing. Uh, and we are all hopeful that NIPUN mission, which was launched in 2021, will not come to an end in 26-27, but will be extended beyond 26-27.
With that Nippon mission, I think Spithin Braid, he has a close working experience with this Nippon system also, and he's. I was reading about his work experience, a lot of work in the remote places, in the villages also. Just wanted to know, how do you find those, those learning capacity of those Anganwadi workers, or village center teachers? Have they been able to give those young ones real terms of education in terms of foundational learning? Because that is the time when a student will have a an inspiration to have more education, to go to study, to further study, especially in the poverty ridden sectors, when even not studying is just okay, just fine. If you are not studying, it's okay, you can go and work or help your father or your family business. So how do you find this small scale government intervention, especially Anganwadi and other such models? Are they working fine?
So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. And, it's wonderful to see that we are talking about learning. And, this shift itself is a very encouraging that, earlier we used to talk about our children going to school. Now we are talking about our children learning. So this itself is a very, very promising and very interesting thing. I believe Nipun Bharat has already, achieved very, something very significant. And this is one of the very important aspects that today we are focusing on learning. We have seen lots of encouraging progress. States have developed FLN missions. Teachers are becoming more familiar with competency-based learning. All that language has changed. Assessments, like Sunisha was mentioning, are also improving. There is a much, I would say, greater collaboration between government, civil society, funders, CSRs. One point I often make is that our focus from on this foundational learning, actually it's a very recent phenomena. For decades we have concentrated on expanding access to education, and it is only 4 or 5 years that, especially after NEP and Nipun Bharat is in place, India has collaboratively started recognizing the foundational learning as a is a cornerstone for education, as a basic education. So I think we should appreciate how much has been achieved in a relative short period. Governments, teachers, Anganwadi workers, NGOs, many people, communities, parents have already worked incredibly hard to build the momentum in this. But having said this, we should also not, I would recommend not to lose patience, because India is a very large and diverse country. The point that even Sunisha and even Joseph was also mentioning, it's a very diverse country, big country. Building a system where every child is achieving foundational literacy and numeracy will require sustained effort over many years. System transformation doesn't happen, overnight. It requires consistency, collaboration, a continuous improvement. So for me, I think FLN, for example, do not start in grade 1. It is already it starts from birth. So strengthening that early childhood education system, making sure that people understand the school readiness. People don't understand. It's a very in early childhood, people, we all know, we use a lot of jargons, cognitive development, emotional development. And if I tell you the Hindi words, those are more बड़े बड़े बम हैं. बौद्धिक विकास, शारीरिक विकास. So if we really believe that कि वो गांव का आदमी, एक किसान, people understand what is school readiness for them, we have to simplify things and make sure that they understand this, they believe that they can contribute into this. So for me, it's there are a lot of stakeholders that we need to empower, including parents, families, like Sunisha was also talking about improving assessments. So you can see that, there are a lot of dimensions when you are trying to build this entire movement. Yes, many people identify that teacher capacity as the biggest challenge. Certainly, teachers need continuous support, especially Anganwadi worker who are coming with not of a sort of a lot of professional development, pre-service training, etc. But I would put this in my frame is different, little different because I'm with them on ground. So I believe that the biggest challenge is not teachers' willingness. It is, building a strong implementation system. Across country, we have good policies, quality teaching learning materials, large scale training programs. Yet often, I think we expect that, a single training program to change the classroom practice. In our experience from the ground, lasting change happens when teachers and Anganwadi workers receive continuous mentoring, handholding at the spot, classroom observations, constructive feedback. We have to create a lot of peer learning and regular encouragement opportunities for all of them. And then this same applies to early childhood program. Children arrive in grade 1 with a very different levels of readiness. In fact, if you refer to the USER data, the Right to Education Act is saying that 6-year-old child should be in grade 1. But if you look at the range of, the variety of institution that 6-year-old child is in, somebody are in Anganwadi, somebody are in school, so that is one, I believe that we have to streamline that transition in a way that is smoothen for children and family. Then there are a lot of issues about convergence and so I believe that this is a continuous system and we need to keep doing things. Let us not say we are very very famous, India is very famous in terms of saying that 5 years mein humne ye kar liya. We have to appreciate that first step, but we should not lose our patience and say it needs continuous effort. It took 5 decades to ensure the 100% access to school, and we are believing that within 5 years we'll achieve universal FLN. It's not fair on the part of a system that is delivering all this. So we need to support. Yeah.
Smitten, you were right in saying that, and taking cue from your answers, I would go to Sangeeta Dandapat. Smitten was talking about sustainability of the system, also the training and capacity building on part of teachers, because learning ability of a student or learned teacher only can understand, and then part the education. What are the kind of intervention that private sector is supposed to do or they are doing, and what has been your results? Because while we are talking about this entire FLN system, it is pretty new. So I'm sure your experience would also be not very deep and legacy, but something. Please share what has been your experience in going ahead with this FLN learning in the school systems.
Right. Thank you so much for that question. So firstly, I want to say that when we talk about foundational literacy and numeracy, I think there is a term that has been around for a decade, but when we talk about primary education, that has been here from the moment the education system has worked. And if we look at like NEP from the 90s as well, we're constantly talking about access and how each child should have access to quality education. I think what the NIPUN Bharat program has done, or even NCF and all of them are talking essentially about, is how to ensure that not only is there access to a school, or as Sunisha correctly said, that the physical access of एक school होना चाहिए जहाँ पे मैं जा रही हूँ, but मुझे quality education का मतलब है वहां पे जाके ऐसी क्या चीजें हैं जो मैं कर सकती हूँ जिससे my foundational skills are in a way that I am ready for the coming 20-30 years where I'm going to be part of a workforce. So I think that mission has been there and because I represent Kotak Education Foundation, so for the last 16 years we have been working in the education sector. Our reach we have always focused on how do we ensure that we work with a lesser cohort of schools, but we go in depth with what are the needs of those students and how we can ensure that they're getting the kind of access that they need and the kind of quality education that I think a lot of us have got. So that is one thing. With our regards to the Foundational Literacy and Numeracy program, our program, as you Abhishek correctly said, is a 4-year-old program, and we are working with over 2,000 schools at this point. Our experience has also been kind of similar to what I think Sunisha was talking, or Smithin were also talking. Our program is completely a TOT model, which essentially means it's a teacher training program. And our focus has been to ensure that, and in the FLN ecosystem, if you see, there are different stakeholders जिनकी जिम्मेदारी उतनी ही है जितनी सबकी है. तो ऐसा नहीं बोल सकते कि पेरेंट्स की जिम्मेदारी कम है या पॉलिसी की जिम्मेदारी कम है या टीचर्स की कम है. The focal area for us has been teacher, because as you correctly said, teacher capacity building is something that is very critical in the whole model that FLN stands on. And with regards to teacher, the role becomes even more critical क्योंकि बच्चे बहुत छोटे हैं. तो बहुत सारा ओनर्स जो होता है सेकेंडरी में या हायर सेकेंडरी में, वो होता है कि बच्चे खुद से सीख रहे हैं. हालांकि वो भी नहीं अप्रिशिएट हम करेंगे, बट मोर फोकस इज कि एक बच्चा जो है वो एडल्ट बन रहा है और उनकी खुद की अंडरस्टैंडिंग के साथ वो आगे बढ़ रहे हैं. विद FLN, बिकॉज ये बच्चे बहुत छोटे हैं, तो टीचर की एक्स्ट्रा जिम्मेदारी बनती है टू इंश्योर दैट दे स्टार्ट फ्रॉम द मोमेंट द चाइल्ड कम्स टू अ क्लासरूम, विच इज मे बी ग्रेड 1 में वो फर्स्ट टाइम क्लासरूम में आ रहे हैं. और हम खुद इमेजिन कर सकते हैं कि अगर मैं आज एक ग्रेड 1 का बच्चा हूँ जो फर्स्ट टाइम स्कूल में जा रही हूँ, अभी तक मैंने अपनी पूरे लाइफ में आई हैव बिन विथ माई पेरेंट्स in my comfort of my house, and suddenly one day my mother takes me and drops me to this school or this Anganwadi center, and the child may not be equipped to handle the situation, because quickly we start feeling unsafe whenever there is a high level of change that happens in the child's life. So the teacher's responsibility, the Anganwadi workers' responsibility starts from the fact that how do I make the child feel comfortable? How do I build that joy of learning? Not by giving कि चलिए अभी हमें ABCD लिखना है या 12 खड़ी लिखनी है, but through play-based, art-based programs जिससे मुझे स्कूल में आने में मजा आए. So I think that's where the critical role of the teacher starts. And of course, that goes from that to a role of a mentor. A lot of times, because our children come from disadvantageous backgrounds, it can be as simple as talking to parents, being the only point of contact for the child, where the child feels safe enough to talk about a lot of things जो वो शायद घर पे नहीं बात करे होंगे. तो टीचर का रोल बहुत बहुत क्रिटिकल है. And as and when we work more with teachers, we realize that and this has been our experience as well, that teachers have intentions to be able to do good by the students, and you can see that passionate. I mean, all of us here are doing working very closely with teachers on workshops and otherwise as well. However, there are so many logistical issues or issues on their side which doesn't allow them to a lot of times be able to do their best. However, that's when our role also comes in. I think creating safer spaces for teachers, because abhi humne students ke safer spaces ki baat ki, but having that safe space for teacher to be able to talk about what are their needs has to be dealt with very contextually, because ek teacher jo दिल्ली में वो पढ़ा रही है, उनके एक्सपीरियंसेस बहुत अलग होंगे देन महाराष्ट्र में, कोल्हापुर में एक छोटे स्कूल में टीचर जो पढ़ा रहे हैं. तो again, capacity building is one of the key areas, and it's been a very exciting journey, and there's a long way to go, जो हम सब agree करते हैं, but the experience has been good. Yeah, thank you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Tabika. इसलिए भी ये बहुत ज्यादा important है because the two things that currently the youth of the country is talking about or dealing with is one, the being employable, and second is how many of them are getting education till 12th or graduation or post graduation, because probably after then onwards they will be able to be employable, but वो पहले ही उनका इतना मोरल डाउन हो जाता है, इतना उनका रिलक्टेंस हो जाता है स्कूल जाने से, lot of
जी
people either drop out or they stop, वो बस डिग्री के लिए कि बस कर लेना है ग्रेजुएशन एक सोसाइटी में स्टेटस के लिए, that is why they study. So I think Ruchika wants to ask something.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, we know the challenges. In fact, we've touched upon the challenges. Now, let's talk about something positive. However, I feel that, in the pilot projects of many organizations, FLN interventions, they demonstrate impressive outcomes. But then there is a problem of struggle to sustain those gains for a long period of time, especially when we are trying to scale those FLN initiatives. So my question is open to all five of our panelists here. That in your view, what are the essential ingredients of a scalable and sustainable FLN programs? You can give examples from your organizations. And I'd like to begin with Smithinji over here because Pratham has decades of experience in taking learning interventions to scale across diverse communities, across diverse geographies in India. So we'd be keen to hear what those experiences have taught you.
So thank you. That's a very interesting question. From my experience of working on these pilots and scaling things at different parts of India, uh, these are two different mindsets. We need to have because pilots ask question which is, does this intervention work? Okay,
Hmm.
whether this solution is workable. But when you talk about scale, the scaling ask is, can our government system, the largest system, adopt it, own it, and sustain it? So these are like, these are two different points. And there are five ingredients that I believe, based on our experience at Cross Pratham, those are essential when we are talking about scale, okay, which we may not focus in the pilots. But when we are taking things on scale, first is simplicity. you know Teachers, anganwadi workers, or any system person already have many responsibilities. They are doing multiple things, so intervention should be very practical, easy to integrate into their daily teaching. It should not feel like a burden or additional thing. We have to make sure that, while you're taking it on scale, do this. Second, I think demonstration. Here we are talking about, Sangeeta pointed out many points where, I've been working with so many Anganwadi workers. I've conducted several training sessions, but real thing happen when you go to their particular आंगनवाड़ी and talk to them and demonstrate things at their context. Because trainings तो हम बड़े बड़े हॉल में करते हैं, अच्छी जगह पे करते हैं, उनकी आंगनवाड़ी 10 बाय 10 की होती है. सो वहां पे उनको जाके जब हम डेमोन्स्ट्रेट करते हैं, सो आई फील इट्स वेरी क्रूशियल दैट ऑल आवर ट्रेनर्स, whether they are monitors, mentors, first they themselves should have that habit of doing demonstration and learning by themselves. This We need to shift this entire mechanism from just training to leaders of practice. All the diet people, all the ICDS supervisory above the teacher or Anganwadi worker, everybody should have a sense. 3 घंटे 30 बच्चों के साथ उसी एनर्जी के साथ काम करना, it's not a joke. It takes energy
Right.
and it requires support. So unless until the bosses or the supervisors or mentors, monitors, trainers understand the real thing, I think so people believe that what they see, they try to adopt it. So demonstration based classroom, this model Anganwadis, or whatever concept that we should believe, that is crucial. Third piece, I think, this continuous mentoring business is very crucial, because training, हमारे देश में ट्रेनिंग का मतलब है सामने बिठाओ, लेक्चर दे दो, सबको समझ में आ गया. It is not going to work. So somebody said that we have to change the नए तरीके का problem है तो नए तरीके से solution. I forgot who said that, but that's a very very valid point. And therefore training business को पूरा बदलने की जरूरत है. अब कितना दुनिया आगे बदल गई है और हम उसी घिसे पिटे मॉडल में हैं. Fourth, I think ownership of government officials, the real ownership. NGOs can innovate, demonstrate, but governments are the institutions that ultimately reach to every child. So, unless until the leadership in the system, all IAS officials, all department people, unless until they understand it and own it and drive it, things don't get on, bigger scale. And finally, I think programs must continue learn, adapt, and improve, because we think that ये fix हो गया अब ये हो गया, that doesn't happen. So scale is not about expanding projects. Scale is about strengthening the system. So that continuity has to be maintained. I'll pause here.
Right, great. Thank you. Nixon, sir, I'd like to know your point of view.
Okay, fine.
And sir, if you could also share your thoughts on do we have the kind of infrastructure to actually help scale the models across our country? What's your take on that?
Thank you. I think Smriti had covered a lot of the points which I thought I will mention. But yes, comprehensively covered most of the points. What I felt is that why pilots fail, you were asking, is that most of the pilots fail because they expect exceptional individuals, exceptional systems and all to make it successful. But that is not the real scenario. Here we have to deal with teachers or Anganwadi workers, etc., who are not very exceptional. They're all normal. So we should have something which they can easily implement. I was thinking, like we were telling, our children are lagging in foundational literacy or numeracy skills, etc. There can only be two reasons. One is teachers are not able to implement learning. Like we are all teaching. Teachers have been teaching, and learning is not happening. And students also, they are not enjoying the learning process. They consider it as a burden or a boredom. Therefore, they are also not learning. So that is why a lot of gap is there in FLN or learning at various levels also. So I feel there has to be a pedagogy which addresses these issues. One, instead of teachers teaching, whether we should focus on learning, whether learning is happening, and whether there is a pedagogy for that, so that teachers can easily implement whatever they have been trained. Second, whether children can enjoy the process of learning, because that is very much important. I always remember my school days and all. I always felt it was really scary to go to schools, because we have to repeat by rote whatever is taught, and not only one sentence or one paragraph. The entire chapter has to be repeated when the teacher is asking us. So it becomes a scary issue to go to schools. Like when you think about school itself, we think it's about something to be scared. Whereas we should try to make the entire process of learning very joyful. And we should explore whether any pedagogy is available which can be aligning with that. The teachers can handle it very simple, like simplicity, and then whether the children are also able to enjoy it. So simplicity is one thing which I feel important. Any pedagogy should be having. Like pilot, you told, when pilot fails when it is done on a large scale, or when it is scaled up, because it's not simple. So simplicity is something which is required, and that is one which doesn't require extensive expertise. So one pedagogy like that will be good, and then where we can see visible success. See, if visible success is there, teachers all become confident that this is something which will produce results. Otherwise, they come to the classrooms, take classes, and goes with the presumption that learning is happening. but then whether there is a pedagogy which will show visible success. And then there has to be continuous assessment of what is being taught, what is being learned, because you cannot improve unless something is measurable. That is one thing. And government ownership. See, we are all doing this FLN. When we discuss about it, we don't think about FLN in private schools. It is mainly we are thinking about FLN in government schools. Means we cannot have a parallel system. We should belong to government, and there has to be government ownership. Devi, and when we implement this program in schools, we also give train the BRPs, DEOs, ARPs, who are in department, teachers, that when these officials visit the schools, they also feel that this is something which we have been trained and this is something owned by the department. So government ownership is very important. And last comes affordability. That level, where it is scaled up, whether it can be affordable. If it is not affordable, it won't be supported by the government. And how long we can depend on CSR donors also. So it has to be whether government will be able to take it forward. And government can do it only if it is affordable. So these are some of the features which come into my mind.
Besides, ask you to add your perspective here. And as I said, if you could share your views on the kind of infrastructure, do we have that kind of infrastructure where we can scale our models further?
Thank you, Ruchika. And I'm going to share how we think at LLF about scale and sustainability based on our work in Haryana, in Uttar Pradesh, and in other states like Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh. I think based on our experience, like Smritin brought out a few key points, I'd like to start with saying that I think the scale and sustainability can be achieved if everybody across the system has one vision, right from the education secretary up to the teacher and the parent. They all know what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and what change is going to happen. So, if everybody is aligned around the same message, then everybody knows what we are trying to work towards. And I think Haryana has very well demonstrated that by having their education minister talk about NIPUN Bharat, their chief minister talk about NIPUN Bharat, their education secretaries talk about NIPUN Bharat, and across the whole ecosystem. Because, I'll refer to an African proverb. It says, it takes a village to raise a child. So it takes an ecosystem to attain foundational skills for all children. The other principle that is important for scale and sustainability is to co-design with the government, not go with a ready-made design and to say this is what has to be implemented. Until unless you co-design with the government, the ownership does not happen, as has been said by previous speakers. And when you co-design with them, they will also tell you, the system people will tell you that what will work, what will not work, while you can tell them there is evidence around how these things work. The third important thing is to let the system lead the implementation. Because if the organization leads, then again, it's an ownership problem, because sometimes we can tend to create parallel mechanisms which may not be sustainable once the organization kind of, moves out of that program implementation. So always let the system lead. Use all system level platforms. So if it's a cluster level teacher meeting, it's a diet level teacher training, reinforce those platforms, strengthen those platforms. Make the program iterative, and I completely agree with what Smritin said. One design and say that this is the design. No, we need to make it iterative, and we have to revisit the design regularly. And based on evidence, make decisions about which TLM is working. Did our teacher training programs work well? Are the teachers really understanding? Are our BEOs, our ARPs really being able to, and provide them the tools for what they have to do? So if an ARP is going for a school visit, do they have the right checklist for their classroom observation? Help them in terms of deciding and prioritizing what feedback they want to give to the teacher for making improvements in the classroom. And all of this will work when there is regular technical support that is provided across the system, right from the national level up to the school level, so that you are really helping the system to implement these things. Coming to the point about do we have the infrastructure? We have the physical infrastructure. I think what we really need to strengthen is the human resource infrastructure that is required. We still have schools where there is a single teacher or we have multi-grade classrooms. And therefore, our instructional approaches have to be designed for a multi-grade classroom. We still have kind of shortages of academic resource persons, coaches, and mentors who can do regular visits to the classroom and help and support the teachers. So I think this is the infrastructure that we really need to strengthen. We otherwise, through the investments that the governments are making on NIPUN Bharat, a lot of investment has been happening, and we can see the results of that, positive results of that investment.
All right. Thank you so much. So one common theme is that collective ownership and accountability should be there, and we need to keep evolving our interventions. So I'd like to ask Sangeeta ji over here, her corporate perspective on the kind of mechanisms that are needed to actually not just scale but keep the interventions sustainable over a very long period of time. So what is your take on that? Sangeeta ji.
I'm sorry, Ruchika, it just glitched for a second. Can you just repeat your question?
Yeah, Sangeeta ji, I was just asking like your corporate perspective on what exactly are the mechanisms to make any intervention scalable and meaningful and of course sustainable.
And also, if I may add, Sangeeta ji, how do you keep it, accountable? I mean, what are the ways when you take into account whether your aim or your objective have been achieved? What are the scales and measurement scale that you have kept for yourself?
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for the questions. I think when it comes to Kotak Education Foundation, what our major focus has always been to ensure that we have programs that can be taken up at scale. And when we talk about our FLN program, the same has been true. So when we talk about what are the different mechanisms that we are ensuring that whatever our program is going at scale, first and foremost thing, which I think Sunisha ji very beautifully also added, was the ownership of government. I think that is an important aspect because हम सब government school में काम कर रहे हैं. So it's very important that a scalable and sustainable FLN program works in tandem with the education department and जैसे उन्होंने बोला BO, AO और केंद्रीय प्रमुख, diet principals, all of that. And I think many pilot projects achieve very strong results in the beginning, and later, when we go at scale, they do not work, is because of the fact that pilot तो हम कर रहे हैं, पर हम expect कर रहे हैं कि then the system takes that up and the system is able to show the exact output that we were able to show. So I think government ownership is at a very important aspect that we look at. I think another thing is also, because I will touch upon teacher training or teacher capacity building, is that when we talk about teacher training, as one of us correctly said, कि हम हमेशा ऐसा सोचते हैं कि we have to train teachers आएंगे, they are an empty vessel and we just give them information and then they take that away. But that's not the case, of course. So when we say teacher capacity building, it's a professional development journey that we have to take the teachers through. So one time workshops या हम साथ में मिल रहे हैं, that is not going to build sustainability and scale for something like foundation literacy numeracy, because कितने factors हैं, right? Like if I talk about a primary school teacher, she has say 60 students in her class or 40 students in her class. सब different language बोलते हैं. कुछ बच्चे आए हैं daily wage workers, if I talk about महाराष्ट्र, जो तमिलनाडु से आए हैं तो वो तो तमिल में बात कर रहे हैं, स्कूल में उनको मराठी सीखनी है और फ्रेंड्स के साथ वो हिंदी में बात कर रहे हैं. Now there are 3 languages and the child is struggling in all 3. Now when we say FLN, Foundational Literacy and Numeracy, we are not saying कि आपको मैथ्स लिखना है या आपको 12 खड़ी लिखनी आनी चाहिए. When we say base or foundation, it starts from the fact that is a teacher getting the adequate tools to be able to manage a classroom where there are issues of multilingualism is huge, and in a diverse country like ours बहुत major issue है. तो I think scalability तब आएगी जब when we will be motivating the teachers that they take accountability and they take up the tools that are extremely necessary and do it in school. Because I think one of the major things that for teacher training program to also be successful is the last mile implementation, which I think is somehow lacks in a lot of times. Policy wise हम बहुत कर रहे हैं. A lot of us also shared that government is spending a lot of money to ensure कि निपुण भारत का mission 2027 तक हम कहीं पहुंच सके, जो हम पहुंच रहे. But that is another important aspect, that training shouldn't remain training but should become like a professional learning journey. I think another thing that Nixon correctly said is practical होना चाहिए, simple होना चाहिए, yet innovative होना चाहिए. I think that balance is also very important for us to be able to ensure कि हम we have those mechanisms in place. I think another question that you asked about how do we ensure that the program is doing well? I think a lot of mechanisms are there across different projects. And especially if I talk about FLN, the focus should not be on the amount of input hours that is going. So by input hours, what I mean is teachers को कितने hours of training मिल रहे हैं, but the mechanism of measurement has to be बच्चे सीख रहे हैं क्या, children learning outcome should change. So I think that is a single most strong indicator for any pilot or scale कि बच्चे सीख रहे हैं और निपुण भारत का जो निपुण लक्ष्य है वो हम complete कर पा रहे हैं. So I think that those will be the ones.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to Robin ji. Robin ji, आप बताइए कि the technological intervention now, AI, हम में से कोई भी उससे बच नहीं सका है. So how do you make that as a positive mechanism to scale and keep the projects going on and sustainable? So what is your perspective on that?
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. And yeah, technology is actually evolving, and it is evolving in a much faster rate than we anticipated or than we expected.
Right.
However, as far as the use of technology in teaching in the rural sector or in the government sector is concerned, there is a lot to cover right now. I don't think AI is evolved enough to replace a teacher at any cost. So, in my opinion, in our experience also, we use also technology and we use AI too much into the Shiksha program, where we're using ICT-based education to enhance foundational literacy numeracy standard in schools. But we limit it to the analysis part, where we are using the data to analyze it, to give us more insight, to give us faster insights. We use the data and to report back to teachers, to give feedback, data-driven feedback to teacher in a much faster way. We use it to that part, but we do not touch upon, and I think collectively we all agree that we do not touch upon how to use AI to teach students, because it's not there yet, and it should not be done actually. When we are talking about foundational literacy numeracy, it should not be even if we have the capability, we should not eliminate human touch while teaching our children in the country, in the nation. However, yes, there are other aspects to it. You can use AI in data analysis. We can use AI in creating reports, creating fact sheets, giving immediate feedback, whether on the screen or on the WhatsApp of the teachers. We can use AI to create digital content rather more faster way than in a conventional manner. Of course, there are limitations, but I'm optimistic about AI being evolved and giving us relevant answers and relevant outputs. However, uh, teaching is a very it's not just a mechanical thing. It's an emotional, psycho-emotional development thing. So it
Absolutely.
requires human touch. It requires human evaluation, and experimenters like or NGOs or even government and R&D departments of the government should invest time and energy to enhance the learning experience of a child, rather than getting. I often say one thing: we should not get mesmerized with technology. We should use technology like salt, ना बहुत ज़्यादा ना बहुत कम, optimum level पे इस्तेमाल करना है. We should understand where we should stop ourselves. Of course, we can create classes where the child can walk in and the attendance will be marked thereon. But do we have the infrastructure to support it? Do we have the resources to support it? Do we have the bandwidth to support that? And if not, then we need to rethink the technology route in a way that it increases the effectiveness within the given resources.
It's 16:30.
Sorry, my machine keeps on telling me time.
So yeah, our machine is also telling Robin the same, and we'll just be wrapping up this entire discussion. And just one last sentence, if all of us, all of you, can just put in just one thing that you will want to add in Nipun Bharat scheme. Just one thing, because all of you have been exposed to that scheme, that aim, objective, and everything. So just one thing that you would want to add or delete from that Nipun Bharat scheme. What will that be?
Are you asking me? Okay.
Yeah, asking you. Start with you, and but I'll go to everyone.
I think I will continue one line with what I was saying. The usage of technology should be added in the Nipun larger Nipun scheme. We have been experimenting with ICT in Nipun, and we have seen good results. So I think usage of technology should be added there.
Nipun, sir.
I think it should be right pedagogy and the teacher capacity and technology to amplify both.
Yeah. Smithin.
So I think today we most talk about teachers and it's their capacity. I think it's not fair to put all the burden of FLN on only teachers, because teachers are not only they're one of the main players, but there are others who need to understand their roles, especially families, parents. So today we couldn't talk about it much, but I think if NIPUN 2.0 gives more energy to build this ecosystem around the child, which creates a conducive learning environment. And I echo what Robin said about AI. AI can help reduce non-teaching tasks for teachers. That will be a great innovation for India, so that teachers can focus on FLN. Thank you.
Thank you, Smithin. Sunisha, ma'am.
Thank you, Abhishek. So one thing that I feel that we need to do and doing more of in terms of Nipun would be that we need to extend Nipun Bharat up to grade 5. We still have children who are moving up the grades without grade appropriate foundational skills. Two, I would say we need to really now focus also on the inequity of learning within a classroom. We know the average scores are improving, but our own data, and we've looked at other data, a state may be performing very well above the national average, but when you go and disaggregate that data for every district, you will find there are districts which are much below the national average. So I think focusing on equitable learning, that all children learn, I think should become the principle of Nipun Bharat moving forward, because we'll also have to give more focus on girls, because the data is pointing out that as children progress up the grades, girls' performance levels are declining, and therefore the equity lens to Nipun Bharat has to really sharpen.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Sunisha ji. Sangeeta ji, please. One thing that you want to add or
I think
deep
बहुत सबने बोला, but I think one of the important aspects that I touched upon before as well were to find ways or to empower teachers how to deal with or do better with diverse classrooms and diversity from multilingual perspective, cultural perspective, gender perspective, inclusive education perspective. I think a lot is at stake when it comes to foundational literacy and numeracy and building, जैसे हम बोलते हैं कि we're literally building the future of the country, and it's very important that those diversities are handled, because I feel like there is a breakthrough that is very much possible when the child feels heard and loved and is taught in the way that they understand. So I think, yeah, diversity would be something.
Handling diversity is very sensitive. Why? Because we are just winding up the discussion. But one experience that I'm sharing right now, my mother tongue is Maithili, and I've studied in Hindi and English. I married to a Haryanvi person. My kids are now living in a place which is predominantly Nepalese, and their school education is happening in English. So there is so many languages that they have to go around. And Smriti was talking about language and diversity. Having diversity is good, but you also have to narrow down the diversity so that somebody also becomes able to learn. And what should be the language of learning? The first language of learning, it is very necessary, and maybe sometimes later we'll also discuss the importance of first language and how imparting FLN in first language should be mandatory and should be more easy for the children to understand. Thank you everybody for joining in today's discussion. Ruchika Kumar, please, Ruchika, have a few words before we
Yes,
wind up.
so thank you. On behalf of the CSR Universe, I sincerely thank all our distinguished panelists for sharing your valuable perspectives and rich on-ground experiences with us, and a special note of appreciation to Devi Sansthan, our knowledge partner for this roundtable, for supporting this dialogue and for its continued commitment to advancing FLN in India. And of course, we would like to thank everyone who joined us today on LinkedIn. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to continuing our discussions and more knowledge sessions with you on the CSR Universe. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, everyone.